best customer isn't always right story. Story when I used to work at McDonald's. A woman came in and ordered a Big Mac, fries, and a drink, so I put her order in as a Big Mac combo, since it is cheaper than getting those three things separately. She then proceeded to scream at me claiming that I'm ripping her off and charging her for something she didn't even order. My manager then proceeded to simply charge her for those three things separately, and she ended up paying more. Story 2, it was Black Friday. We sold out a certain product. The woman told me to remove every ad because I'm not allowed to advertise something I don't have. That's not how this works. I also had a customer to try to park his truck in my store. Yes, you read that right. He said he's allowed to park there because it doesn't explicitly say no parking. Well, sir, it doesn't explicitly say don't me. So how about you bend over? Story 3, I was working in a movie theater, and a lady in her 50s comes in ID like a ticket for movie name. The one at 830, yes, that'll be 12, please, starts shouting what? You just told me it was 830, no ma'am. The movie is, you just told me ITS 830, the MOV. This is ridiculous. So what is the price? 12, 830 is. So what IS 830? I see my manager coming deal with it with my manager. Bye. Go back to making popcorn that day. Was also my 21st birthday. Edit formatting. Story 4 worked at a popular cafe. So we got stupid all the time. My two favorite, though, once had a man flag me down and start shouting about this weird worm as pie. I took a quick look at the pie and noticed it was actually a piece of onion. After a couple of minutes of calming the man down, I asked him what sort of pie he ordered. Had ordered beef and onion. He had me swap his half-eaten beef and onion pie for another beef and onion pie. Because of it, another time I was delivering a large tray of food to a table. Everything going fine, just a couple sandwiches, etc. As I'm about to walk away, the older guy at the table grabs my attention. The conversation went like, this guy, is this cheese sandwich dairy-free? Me, as far as I'm aware, we don't do dairy-free cheese. So, no guy, no, I mean, does it have any milk products in me? Yes, it's got cheese and butter and guy. Well, can you bring me it back without the dairy products? Me, you want your cheese sandwich without any dairy products? Him, yes. I promptly returned it to my manager, let her know the situation, and said, good luck figuring that one out. Edit. Wow, so many upvotes. Thanks, guys. Story 5, I dealt with a lot of dumb as a camp director, but one that always sticks out in mind after the week is over a mother comes roaring up to me and has murder in her eye. Having I introduced myself to the families less than an hour before she knew I was an authority figure in the camp. She is irate over the fact that her son told her other campers were using foul and distasteful language in front of her son. Assuming the worst, I ask which word were used, and she leans forward to me and whispers, "and butthole." Without trying to laugh, I tell her I will discuss it with the staff. Did I mention that her son was a 15-year-old teen camper? Story 6, I work in produce. An older woman wanted gala apples. I showed her where they were at and went about my business. She then walked up holding a bag of apples, and we had this exchange. Her, I wanted galas. These are Chelan apples. Me, yes, ma'am. Those are galas. Chelan is the brand. Her, no. They're Chelans, it says on the label. Me, Chelan is the brand, ma'am. Those are galas. Are, oh, well, we'll see about that snooty tone, by the way. She examines the bag as I stand there, sets it down, and quietly says, oh, you're right, and walks away. That's not the worst one, but the only one that comes to mind right now. Story 7, most satisfying customer interaction of my cashier career was having the manager back me up on refusing to process a return for incense that didn't taste good. Story 8, I work at a concert venue. I had a customer call the day after the show wanting a refund because the artist did not play his favorite song during the show. Story 9, I was working in a frozen yogurt shop, and a customer requested that I surprise her with my choice of flavor and add-ons, as well as the size. I created a medium chocolate topped with granola and rainbow sprinkles. She looked it over and said it was too small, too crunchy, unattractive, and, oh, by the way, she was allergic to chocolate. Story 10, when I used to work at DQ, there was some lady who literally made me cry over Butterfinger. She didn't understand that what we got was called ground Butterfingers, and she wouldn't accept that I wasn't sabotaging her candy bars before making a blizzard with them. She made 2 other girls cry too. My boss ended up banning her from ever returning. The owners don't take from anyone, and I love that. Story 11, lady comes into our restaurant an hour before closing time and announces she's having her bridal shower at our restaurant of 60 people in about 15 minutes from now. We tell her we'll do our best to accommodate them, but we already have a wedding party in our private room, which only seats 50 anyways. But we're happy to accommodate her group in a regular area, warning her that we aren't set up to just immediately feed this number of people this late at night, all at once. I heard her say, well, this is ridiculous. I sent out invitations to my guests 2 months ago. My manager replied, well, we didn't get one of those. You've made no reservation, and we'll do what we can to feed your group, but the meals are not going to come out at the same time. Lady starts having a hissy fit about us ruining her dinner. Oh meo, gfy. She was being rude enough that manager then informed her that we'd love to help her, but a party this large, at no notice, at the end of the night would require a 30 mandatory tip, and we would only stay open long enough to serve their food, plus 20 minutes to eat. She stormed out, and a lot of her party ended up just eating dinner at our restaurant. We didn't enforce the required tip for them, because they had no other option. Most tipped at least 20 anyways. Several of them left glowing reviews for how accommodating we were, and how great the staff was, how much they enjoyed the food, etc. Story 12 Blockbuster. This woman would repeatedly rent games, and keep them until they cycled out of inventory, and she would get charged for them. Then she would complain about the charges, stating she returned the game weeks ago. My boss would always remove the charges, and then the game would magically be in the Dropbox the very next day. This happened all the time with this lady. I even commented on her account every time it happened. Finally, one time, I refused to remove the charge and told her I was sick of her petty game. She called my boss. He listened to my side of the story, told me to remove her charges, and the next day the game was in the Dropbox. I told him it happened again, and he transferred me to a different store. Fast forward a few months, and the woman's 10-year-old daughter comes in my new store to rent American Pie. Sorry kid, you gotta have an adult come in and rent this for you. She goes out to her mom, who I can clearly see through the window, tells her what I said, and I get the most evil glare I have ever seen as she throws her car into reverse and leaves without a movie. I worked for an airline. A customer calls and wanted to go to a city. We don't fly to... No problem. I tell him we fly to city, and then they can take another airline to final destination. He starts screaming, "Are you new? How can you be so stupid? I am on your website, and you do fly there." I explained that I'd been employed a mere 25 years with that airline, but I'm always learning. Then I directed the customer to click on the connecting flight number, then read to me what it says: Flight 123 operated by other airline. Oh? Why he didn't just book it himself online will become apparent later. We continued on, and I made the reservation. This customer complained every time I had to ask for info or say a federally mandated notification. Nothing unusual about that. I did politely ask him to keep his volume down because I could not help him with my ears ringing. Then I asked for the credit card number to complete the purchase. He started screaming again that he was not giving me his credit card. He was using his bank miles that cannot be accessed by me or the airline. I explained that his bank took his miles and called us and actually purchased the ticket with actual money. He went totally insane, screeching. I let him know if he didn't clean up his filthy language, I was going to hang up on him. He then asked for his supervisor, which I was, yippee. The coworker, I begged to take this call, explained the situation calmly. I listened in. Then the customer said, I already tried calling the bank reservation line, and they said I couldn't do it. Then they hung up on me. Believe it or not, most of my customers were lovely. This one, not so much. Story 13. Work in a takeout food business. A lady ordered a delivery with about 3 meals, one of which had mushrooms in. She called about, I would say, 15 minutes after receiving her order to complain that I tried to kill her by putting mushrooms in her meal. She did not state that she or anyone had a mushroom allergy and went to yell and demand free stuff. The yelling lasted about 10 minutes of her just yelling and threatening to report us, and all I could do was say why she did not state that she had an allergy. In the end, she got nothing, and funny enough, ordered again about 3 weeks later. Story 14. I used to coach gymnastics for what were largely upper middle class and above clients. Dumb blonde housewife who managed to find a way to talk about how much money her husband makes in several conversations with me and others. Tells me her husband wants to know why they were charged 13 times for the monthly tuition fees last year. I tell her we charge every 4 weeks, not every month. This is made very clear in the contract they sign and on any of the literature about our class times and tuitions. A couple days later, her Duchicano of a husband comes in demanding an explanation as to why he was overcharged last year because he was unsatisfied with the explanation I gave his wife. He's a big, powerful salesman or something, and just a dumb little girl who teaches kids to do somersaults. He was so smug, thinking he's going to school me on being so dumb, or worse, doing sketchy business. I once again explained that we charge in 4-week increments, not monthly. I explained that there are 52 weeks in a year, and 524 is 13. He still didn't get it. So I had to pull out a calendar and count it out to him. He got huffy and walked out. That was about 4 years ago, and they still bring their kids as far as I know. Story 15. Worked at a local upscale restaurant in the Midwest. We had bad weather coming in one night that turned from a tornado watch to a tornado warning. I stayed later than the rest of the staff minus 2 other managers who were going to stay put since they lived half an hour away, and the tornado sirens just went off. I'm on my way out the door because I live 5 minutes away and run into the 20-person reservation that didn't answer their phone when we called 5 times to tell them We were closing due to the tornadoes. So we're outside in a thunderstorm with the tornado sirens blaring, and these people cannot grasp the situation and are acting like it's just a normal day. I try for a few minutes to get reason in their heads, but they're having none of it. So I get the two other managers to deal with it and went home because I couldn't handle that level of stupid anymore. Story 16, customer orders a bowl of soup to go. We are very busy and currently out of the type of soup she ordered. I tell her it will be a significant wait, as it takes at least 10 minutes to heat up soup. She agrees. 2 minutes later, she asks me where her soup is. 2 minutes later, she asks again. I get frustrated and tell her, well, put it in the microwave. 2 minutes later, same deal, where's my soup? It's in a microwave, ma'am, but it will take a little longer. Make the microwave go faster. Okay, well, whatever. I pull a little early and it's still cold, but at this point, gaff, I portion out her soup. Our to-go soup containers were taller and narrower than the in-house bowls, which were flat and wide. The volume of soup remained consistent between the two containers. I know this because the portion size was 2 ladles, regardless of container. I bring this customer her soup, and she immediately protests that I didn't give her enough soup. She doesn't want to pay the same price for less soup, just because she's taking it to go. I attempt to explain the concept of conservation, which is typically grasped around age 7. To this grown woman, she stares at me the entire time with this suspicious look on her face, like she thinks I'm trying to pull a fast one on her. But the bowls in-house are bigger. Eventually takes her soup, shows back up half an hour later. It's cold. I don't work there anymore. Story 17, I'm a long-haul flight attendant. Had a passenger on a flight once that had laid their 8 or 9-year-old on the ground to sleep. I asked the mother to politely pick her up as it wasn't safe, to which the mother informed me that it was safe and pulled the "I've done it plenty of times before" line. Things escalated dramatically from here when I insisted she pick her child up. It took 20 minutes of arguing, the waking of the entire aircraft, the captain, the purser, and threats of restraint to calm her down. We eventually managed to get the child in the seat with a pillow I had found in the aircraft cupboard. The reason we can't have anyone on the floor is that in the event of sudden decompression, the masks won't reach ground level. A person has around 4 seconds of useful consciousness in a worst-case scenario, so the mother wouldn't be able to take her mask off to bend down, pick her child up, and put her on oxygen. This is also the reason we tell you to put your own mask on before assisting others. It's a lot easier helping your child with their mask while you're conscious. Story 18, I was working at a gas station that had updated pumps, except for one. The one old pump had the thing under the nozzle you had to flip up to turn the pump on. Now I can see on the register if someone is using or trying to use a credit card. This lady comes in and says, my card isn't working at the pump, and I explain to her that you have to flip up the lever for it to work. She tells me, well, I already put my card in. I tell her, ma'am, your transaction cancels after a short time to prevent inaccurate transactions. She says again, but I already put it in. I explain to her that I can see active cards by looking at the register, but this just isn't computing in her brain, and I'm busy. I explain to her 2 or 3 more times, and she's still not getting it. Now there's a line of 15 people behind her, so I look past her to the next customer and say, what can I get for you? She storms out, gets her gas, and comes back and looking pissed to wait in the line she created. She gets to the front and sneeringly says, what's your name? And I tell her, Patrick. She says, what's your whole name? I say, what's your whole name? And she told me her whole name. I tell her that doesn't matter because I'm the only Pat that works here, and she tells me she will be making a complaint because I was very rude. At this point, I put my line on pause for a second and say, lady, you came in, I told you what to do, you went back out and did what I told you and got your gas. If I wasn't busy, I would have come out and helped you. She says, I'm sue you would have, and leaves. Told my boss about it the next day. And he says if she calls me, he'll tell her you only have one leg. Story 19, I had a customer's father call and yell at me because his daughter rented a storage unit at a different price he was quoted. His daughter, who was in her 30s, mind you, had no problem with the price. No one in our location ever had a conversation with her father. I sat and listened to him tell me how awful at customer service I was, and all the people he referred to my location were going to move out now. Oh no. The kicker was his daughter left us a 5-star review on Yelp after she moved out, praising us for our stellar customer service. Story 20, I was working at a hotel, and a guy comes in and just slaps his ID on the counter without saying anything. I look up his reservation, and it's not in the system. I tell him we don't have it, and he flips out, start calling me incompetent, and saying he's going to call corporate, etc. Then he says he's been a Hilton Honors member for 5 years, and how dare we lose a reservation. So I just pointed at the large sign on the wall behind me that said Holiday Inn Express. He said nothing, snatched his ID off the counter, and left. Story 21, this may not be the best, but it's the most recent and one I find particularly amusing. I work as an admin at a body shop. It should be noted that I'm a woman, and I tend to sound super young on the phone. A guy called and wanting an estimate. I want an estimate to replace the side view mirror on my truck. I got sideswiped, and it took the mirror off. Me, okay, sir. I can certainly schedule you for an appointment. G, can't you just do it over the phone? Me, we do prefer that you come in, just in case there's damage that isn't obvious. G, look, sweetie, I just want an estimate for how much it will be to replace the mirror on a Silverado F-150. Me, which one? G, what? Me, a Silverado or an F-150? G, I thought they were the same thing. Me, overly polite and more than a little condescending at this point. No, sir. A Silverado is a Chevy and an F-150 is a Ford. Idiot. When I worked a summer job at a store in Texas, I had the honor and privilege of ringing up a lady who was buying organic plums. The regular price for non-organic was $3.99 a pound. The organic plums were, I kid you not, $6.99 a pound. Well, as what often happens with organic produce, it wasn't in the system, so it wouldn't ring up. I told her I would just ring up the non-organic plum price. She said no. I looked at her and said, I can type in the code for regular plums, so these will be $3.99 a pound instead of $6.99. You'll still get organic. She wanted to see a manager. Manager comes up, tries typing in the code not in system. He says, well, we'll just ring it up normal code then and give it to you for $3.99 a pound. She says no. He looks at her and says, you don't want the fruit anymore. She says, I want the fruit, but give it to me for the organic price. The manager looks at her in disbelief and says, just to make sure, I have offered to give these to you for regular price at $3.99 a pound. You still want me to manually charge you $6.99 a pound? She says, yes. I want the organic plums, and I want them for the price on the shelf. That's the price I want to pay. The manager shrugged and manually typed in the weight and price per pound and walked away. I wish you could have seen her face go from angry as she demanded to be charged more, to smug after she won her argument, to surprised as the plums rang up $16 total. Then her face kind of settled into this, so I guess this is my life now, as she paid silently and didn't make eye contact as she grabbed her bag and left. Story 22, it's not much, but here goes. I worked at Cold Stone Creamery one summer and loved the job through and through. Best job ever. I lived in a desert town, and people were so stoked to be getting something to cool off that they didn't even about long lines or anything. One day, a girl came in and ordered an item that had hot fudge. I would always mix in the other ingredients and put the fudge over top of it so that it wouldn't melt the ice cream. She requested specifically that I'm mixing the fudge. I hand her order, and she looks at it and says it's all melted. I say I'm sorry. I can remake it and just pour the fudge over the top. She says please remake it, but still mixing the fudge. I point out we're probably going to be having the same conversation in about 2 minutes about how hot things melt ice cream. But she insists. I redo her order the way she requested. She looks at it again and, predictably enough, complains that it's melted. I say I'm sorry, but I am unable to keep hot things from making ice cream melt. This tells me no offense, but she would rather have a coworker remake it. I get my manager and explain what's happening. He offers to remake it. You can guess what happened. After the third bowl of melted ice cream doesn't meet her approval. She says she maybe just wants a different item. The manager says he's not giving her a fourth item if she only paid for one. So she demands her money back. He says no, so she calls us both and storms out. Story 23, a customer screamed at people over the phone for 2.5 hours before finally getting to me manager and billing, and argued with me for another 2.5 because she claimed how is it my responsibility to read my bill because she had been charged for 4 years of HBO and something else for like 30 and wanted that money back. Story 24, I worked at a healthy fast food place, nothing grilled, deep fried, etc. Wraps, rice noodle bowls, salads, etc. Anyway, we open at 7:30 a.m. At 7:40 a.m., a woman walks in and wants to order lunch for her and her boyfriend. Okay, no problem. People usually stop by before work to grab a salad or whatever. First, she asks for 2 bowls with a quinoa base. Sure, then she orders 2 soups. I told her okay, but the broths aren't warm yet as they haven't had a chance to heat up. She says it's fine, as long as they can be microwaved. I tell her that will work and remind her do it for a little longer as the noodles will take a bit to heat up. So, with said instructions, she pays and leaves. 20 minutes later, the store phone rings, and I answer to some guy yelling that I serve his girlfriend cold soup. Pardon? He repeats it loudly, so I told him that they were ordered literally 10 minutes after we opened B, that I had informed his girlfriend that they would not be warm, but could be microwaved for lunch. He continues to yell at me, saying it's bad business, etc. After about 4 minutes of his verbal, I told him again that the soup can be warmed and that he might want to talk to his girlfriend as, again, she was told the soup was cold. He demands a refund, and in my best kill them with kindness voice that I would be more than happy to give him a refund if he can come in at his earliest convenience. Never came in, never called back. He must have talked to his girlfriend. Story 25, we have policy in the bakery that police, firefighters, EMTs, etc. get their first item free. So if a cop comes in for a slice of pie and a drip coffee, We'll charge him $1 for the coffee and gets the pie for free, or if a paramedic comes in and wants half dozen donuts, we'll only charge him for 5, whatever. Only thing is you have to have proof. Most people take advantage when they're on the clock just got off, so we don't even bother asking them because uniforms, but everyone has some sort of ID that they can flash when they're not. So it's a non-issue. One day we had a cop come through, full uniform, and we gave him a slice of cake and a latte. He's one of our regulars, so I talked to him for a bit. He asks after my business partner. I ask about what his shift's been like. The usual, he goes to sit down, and this couple asks why he only got charged 3. I tell them our policy, and they tell me one of them is a cop and the other is a detective in a small city in our state. I tell them that's nice, but we only have it open to people that work in our city and the surrounding areas. They freak out, like absolutely lose their, it's so unfair, you're being biased against us for no reason, etc., etc. And then they demand to speak to the manager, I am the owner, and tell them that. They insist that there's no way I could be, and tell me I'm lying, then demand to see the real manager. This goes on for a bit, until finally my cop buddy stands up and asks to see their badges. They both sputter about it for a minute or two, and he firmly asks to see them. Again, neither one of them had their badges on them. He asks to see any ID proving that they're what they say they are. They have none. He looks at me and says they're lying about who they say they are, and I sure as suggest you don't serve them, and they scurried out with their tails between their legs. Story 26, I worked retail in the early 90s, so we still had actual price tickets which were scanned and read an internal SKU. Initially, it would just bring up the SKU and the price on the screen. Well, we started having real problems with tags switching, i.e., people would take the tag from a 20 item and put on a 300 item, so it would scan 20. Now, this was a department store, so there was no one who truly knew all the items, just the ones in their own department. So people would switch tags and bring the items to another department to be rung up so they wouldn't be caught. The cashier would just assume the ticket was correct. So to combat this, the registers were updated so that it would show not only the SKU and the price, but also a short description of item on the register when you scan it, i.e. 257 for 27419, 99 Esprit blue skirt. The customer couldn't see it, only the cashier could. We got new inventory in, and this woman brought all this new Jones co-apparel that we had received that day, and I helped put out on the floor and switched all the tags on it. So it rang up on sale at much lower prices. I knew what she was pulling, but I also knew she'd be about it, just gave off that vibe. I ring the first one, a sweater, but it reads that it's pants. Just for kicks, I try another one. It's a skirt, but it reads a scarf when I scan it, so I look at her and say there seems to be a problem. Looks like the prices on these are incorrect. She looks me square in the eye and says absolutely not. If you misticketed them, that's your problem, not mine, and you have to honor the price at this point. I see plain clothes security out of the corner of my eye, so I know they must have picked the dumb on the cameras. I said, well, when I scan your sweater, it comes up as pants and a different brand. Somebody must have changed the ticket on it, and they'll have to take it off the floor to be reticketed. She started to say something, but I had already scanned the next item and said, oh, weird that one is ringing up as a scarf. Then I scanned another one and said, oh, look, socks. She started to look a little nervous at that point and just kind of muttered under her breath, oh, forget it. I don't have time for this, and ran out of the store. After she left, security came over and said they'd been watching her for a while and to let them know if I saw her again. I never did, but not sure if she was ever caught. Stupid lady, TLDR, stupid lady tried to get me to sell her items on which she had changed the tags. I did not sell them to her. Story 27, man threw a hissy fit in front of his young daughter. Because we didn't have a product that he drove 3 hours to buy specifically, it wasn't a fantastically popular product. So we didn't keep a lot in stock, and we had just sold the last one on the shelf the week before, and he hadn't called ahead to ask if it was in stock. He demanded we sell him the half-used sample bottle. Bitched when we refused because we weren't allowed to for health and safety reasons. We offered to check with the store a few miles away had any in stock, but he refused, saying that he had already driven far enough. We offered to order it for him and have it shipped to his house, and would make him a sample to last him until it arrived. But he also refused and insisted that we either sell him the sample bottle or he would never come to our store again. To his credit, I never saw him again. LPT if you have to drive a long way to get a product. Maybe call to make sure it's in stock before you make the trip. Also, don't be in front of your kids. His poor wife looked so embarrassed. Story 28, I used to work at a buffet as a manager cashier, and I remember this one customer that wanted a free meal. Because our food made her throw up, she claimed that she threw up in the bathroom. So I went to check up on it. The entire floor of the bathroom was littered with uneaten food stray from the buffet bar. I returned and politely called bullshit on her story. Her response, and are you not? Then are you calling me a liar? Do you really think I waste food like that? I smugly proceed to checking the cameras. We had one facing the hallway leading towards the bathroom and showing her the footage of her heaping a plate with food, entering the bathroom with said plate, and leaving with a magically empty plate. The look of horror and embarrassment on her face was priceless. She paid in the end, too. Story 29, I had a lady get really, really mad at me because of how much butter costs, so I did my best superhero pose and promised her that this injustice will not go unpunished. She got confused and left. Story 30 was trimming my horse's feet at work while waiting to take a ride-out trail guide, when a woman walked over and asked if I was hurting him. No, it's like trimming your fingernails, and probably actually feels pretty great. Woman proceeds to insist that I am hurting him. Horse is enjoying lunch, not giving a single at the time, and goes as far as to try and contact animal control. Animal control shows up, we know each other pretty well, and proceeds to tell her the same thing. Woman leaves in a huff, not even getting her back for the ride. She was supposed to go on. The best part is that isn't even the best story from working at that place. Story 31, I worked at a Hollywood video in the town I went to college. The wealthiest guy in town, millionaire, made his money in payday loans, literally earning off the backs of people he took advantage of. So his son was a frequent customer and was a real. He had the same first name as his dad, and he kept taking his dad's credit card to pay for stuff. He let that slip once, and we told him he wasn't allowed to do that anymore. He tried this a couple more times, getting more and more douchey each time. Finally, his dad came in. I let him know that his son couldn't do this, and he went off. Literally the stereotypical, I could buy you. My son can go out and buy a plane right now in cash. Who do you think you were telling him he can't buy a bag of popcorn? About 5 straight minutes of berating and talking to me like I was gutter trash. When he left, I was so angry I was trembling. I had to go to the back office for a half hour to calm down before I could deal with customers again. I got my petty revenge. I happened to be a shift leader, so I commented his account and every one of his family members that they'd have to show ID and could never rent with a single cent of late fee on their account. We had a bit of a grace amount. Dude was rich, but by God, I was going to make him account for every $1.07 and do it in public in front of everyone else. Story 32, customer came up to pay for his meal. Noticed his side of sausages was like $3. That can't possibly be right. I could buy a whole chain of sausages for less than that. What are y'all trying to pull, sir? That's the price for a side of sausage. It's printed on the menu. Well, I'd like to speak to a manager. And for some reason, the manager took the sausages off his ticket. Don't order something and then complain about the price. You're not special. Story 33, guy came up and paid with a 10 bill and was given his change. He then turns around and says, no, I paid with a 20. And the cashier manager said, no, sir, you paid with a 10. He again argued that he paid with a 20. The manager shrugs and says, fine, they'll count my drawer down. And if the total is over, he'll return the change. The customer agrees. And she counts her drawer. It was even. The dude gets irate and starts yelling about how he's positive he paid with a 20 and that the manager was lying. I was standing there also, a manager watching the exchange, and told him I would also count down the drawer. So I counted it aloud, adding up everything in front of him, and once again showed him the reconcile receipt, and the total on the calculator matched. The drawer is even, sir. You paid with a 10? Then he shakes his head and says, well, I disagree with that. Sorry you disagree. But the drawer is even. Nothing else I could do. You're wrong. I disagree. It got to the point where I had to tell him I wasn't giving him any money and wasn't going to count the drawer again as other people were waiting, so he left. How do you disagree with an undeniable fact?